All right, guys, welcome to another Leads to Deals podcast where we talk about everything from leads to deals and everything we talk about leads to deals. I'm excited to have somebody I consider a friend, a longtime sales assassin, a guy that I've worked alongside and looked up to for a while, John O'Leary, CEO of Capsource, one of the rock stars out there, personally done over 300 million in investment projects, funding and driving his clients' growth and dominating the REI space. John O'Leary, welcome, baby.
Scott, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Yeah, it's. I don't know if I ever thought that we'd be chopping it up doing this 5-7 years ago, but look at us now, huh?
I know. I love it. And it's 500 million in.
It's 500 million. All right. Well, we're gonna have to update some LinkedIn data. Yeah. Awesome, man. So I guess before we kind of go into it, let me set the stage for everybody. Obviously, this is a sales-focused podcast. And so one of the things is I don't really go into like the personal origin story, but I love to go into your sales journey origin story. And so I've known you for a while, but ever since I've known you, you've been in sales. And so where does your journey of like, oh, wait a minute, I can use my mouth, I can use the power of persuasion, I can use words to pay my bills. And so when did that start for you?
Great question. So, I mean, like a lot of salesmen and entrepreneurs, probably when you're a young kid. I remember being in middle school selling Jolly Ranchers and Uniball pens. Anything I could do to make a quick buck, but real sales, probably high school. So I got my first sales job in a call center in probably junior year of high school. My dad had got me a job as a front caller, setting appointments for closers. And there was no real training at all. I came in day one. They said, here's a script, follow the script to a T. When you get somebody who's interested, you pass it off to the closer. And I'm a visual learner, right? So I get this script, I read through it. I'm like, all right, this is pretty simple. I kind of survey the room. I see who's closing deals, who's not. And the ones that were making money, I simply tried to mimic what they were doing. And in a short period of time as a fronter, I was making commission checks in half the time. I'd come in 4:00 in my, Catholic school uniform, and I'm making just as big a commission rips as the closer. So in a very short period of time, I was able to save enough cash to go to college, not have to work, and realized that no matter what it is that I'm selling, this is something that I can do forever. And like you said, pay the bills.
So that's interesting you say that, but you used cold calling or sales to fund your college career. Was your original journey, though, planning on not having anything to do with sales? And what was your major?
So my major in college, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Economics. So it in some way, shape, or form, it's sales, right?
Amen.
Whether it's selling stocks, whether it's selling cars. When I went into college, honestly, it was just kind of like, let me pick a career path. I really didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I could make money in sales. So college was kind of a thing where it's like you're told this is what you need to do. And the reality was that it wasn't for me. So I went to school for 3 years, got to the finish line, and I said, you know what? I don't know what I'm going to use this degree for. And when I was a little confused, I guess, for lack of a better term, I had a good friend, actually a common friend of ours, mutual friend, Alex, who said, hey, I'm doing this timeshare thing. Why don't you come and check this out? And next thing I know, I'm selling timeshare with you. And that's really when I got into true sales, I guess. Really kind of perfecting the craft, so to speak.
Was what you were doing? First off, I didn't know that story. As long as I've known you, I didn't know that you were like fresh out of college directly into that. And so our road shows, which we'll clarify here in a second. But for you, when you were doing the phone sales, was that timeshare related as well too, or was that like advertisements? What was it that you were doing on that very first?
It was a combination of like vacation packages and timeshare. It was kind of honestly, a kind of a grimy business. I was a young kid, didn't know any better. So I didn't want to do that forever. There was also no path for real growth, right, within the company. So it was kind of like a short stop. Let me make some money. I don't want to work in college. I want to have that experience, party, have fun. And I was able to do that. I was able to save up enough money as a young kid in high school to not have to work those first few years in college.
I think a lot of us entrepreneurs did outside extracurricular activities, whether it was cold calling or whatever type of sales in high school. I remember thinking in my senior year, like, dude, I'm making more than my teacher. You know what I mean? Like, I'm making more money than my this lady that's in front of the class having to deal with 25 morons like myself. Like, heavens forbid. It's like, I just knew that there was hustles out there that could bring in more money. And you growing up in Orlando, right? That's where you're originally from. For everybody out there, it is the timeshare mecca of the world. And one of the things I always say is I put like timeshare, Kirby vacuums, some solar guys. Like, these are some really elite cutthroat places to learn sales, to learn about that industry. And Orlando's got them. I mean, there's so many good, talented timeshare guys out there because it's a market where you're literally selling air.
For sure. It is not an easy task. I don't care how old you are, to sit down, talk to somebody in some instances that you've never met, and in a 20-30 minute period, collect thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So what it taught me, though, is because in the beginning, it's like, all right, I have a talent for this, but I didn't really have any skills, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So it taught me the power of following a script, right? I know you're a Jordan Belfort fan.
Yes.
And in his book, he talks about the power of a script, right? I think he uses the analogy of that scene in Braveheart with Mel Gibson when he's on the horse, he's got the blue fade, you may take my land, but you'll never take my freedom. And when it clicked, he's like, the director didn't come on to the set that day and say, all right, Mel, just freestyle it.
Exactly.
I can imagine the garbage that would have came out of his mouth. But if you follow this script that is written so well by a creative writer in Hollywood, you get that iconic scene. So in the beginning, it was like, all right, you don't have all of the skills. You have some talent, right? You can read the room and see who's closing deals and kind of mimic what they're doing. And if you do that and stick to the script, you can make money. And then once I really kind of got with you doing the face-to-face thing, it's like, all right, now you need to kind of practice some of these skills, right? You could be like Michael Jordan's a perfect example. There's probably 1,000 basketball players that have graced this planet that had just as much talent, but didn't put in the work, right? So it was like kind of like, all right, I'm going to do sales, but I need to apply that Mamba mentality and really work on my craft. And it wasn't until I actually started with you where I began to do that.
Yeah, I was actually going back to the timeline to kind of prepare for today. And I was like, man, I think we started linking up in like 2008. So you're talking about 15 years ago. And that's when the company was named Leisure Group. Before that, it was Leisure Time. Before that, it was some other brand name, and that was in Virginia. But I had been in high ticket sales for about 7 or 8 years when I first met you. And to think at that time, I really thought I knew so much and I was the hot guy in my head. And dude, I've learned so much more. My sales journey has progressed so much more since those times. But in 2008, when we were in the moment, it was wild, raw dog sales. So when you think about it, like, where was the first time? It wasn't in office or roadshow? Like, kind of tell the audience how we met and what we were doing back in 2008 through 2010.
Sure. So it was in Orlando. So we weren't on the road, at least for that particular week. Alex brought me in. I met you, and it was like that same day, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I came in and you're like, all right, you're going to go and sit through this presentation. And then the presentation's over. So if people don't know, you have essentially like 3 opportunities to make money, in any given day. You have 3 couples that come in, you sit down, you build rapport, they go into a presentation, they come out, you try to close the deal. So I met with you, you looked at me, made some comment about my facial hair and said, all right, we'll give this kid a shot. I go into the presentation, and like any salesman, I come out of there like, I'll buy this. This sounds phenomenal. Threw me down at a table. I had no idea what I was doing. I literally fumbled through it, and I can't remember who it was, if it was you or Alex or somebody came in and closed that deal. First ever tour.
First one. Oh, man.
So excited. I was like, all right, this is it. I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And yeah, that was it. There was no real training. It was kind of just throw them into the fire. Let's see what happens, and either sink or swim.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to that here in a second. I remember the first time I got my first sale when I was like 20 in timeshare, and I got my teeth kicked in on the response because same thing, like got out of the gates. It wasn't my very first client, but it was one of the very first few. Got a sale. The next morning, they called us in front of the room and said, "Hey, okay, Scott, come up. You got your first sale. Everybody's hyping you up." And and then he said, "So how do you think it went, or how did you get the sale?" And I said something that I meant at the time. I was just like, "Oh, well, you know what? It was fairly easy. It was just simple. It just happened." And it's like, I think I'm good at this. And whatever his response was, I can't remember exactly, but it was so embarrassing to me because essentially he was like, "You naive fucking child. You don't understand even why you got the deal. You got that deal because you went through this process, because the TO came over, because the other guy came over. You think that just fell out of the sky into your lap? Oh boy, you got a long way to go." And I know after that first deal, then reality started to set in at some point. Like they don't all fall down on the first shot.
Right. Well, you have no idea when you go into it, right? You're not trying to sell anything because you don't really know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that resonates with the consumer, the buyer, right? They weren't threatened on those first few deals. So then, obviously it's a game of numbers. So you go through it and maybe I whiffed on the next 10. So then you start to apply some tactics and trying to do things that are maybe out of your comfort zone. So I think in the beginning, it was like the first time when I was in high school and I got the sale, I was setting appointments, right? Yes. And I'm doing it so well. One day I was like, screw it. I took the script off of somebody else's desk and I was like, I'm just going to try it. And same thing. It was the first one. I went through the script A to Z and I hung up the phone and I had to write the credit card information down on like a lined piece of paper. I didn't even have like an intake form. And I got up and I went over to my manager and I was like, man, I got one. And they're like, you got one what? I was like, I did it. I went beginning to end. I got the sale. And it was almost because one, I didn't know what I was doing. I probably wasn't overthinking it. And I just followed the script.
So our first sales job, to paint it even a little bit more detailed, it wasn't always in the office. A lot of times what we were doing is, this is called Travel Club. And we would drop like 20, 30, 40, 50,000 pieces of mail, just depending on the market. One place in particular is Port Charlotte, Florida. Our client avatar was senior citizens. And so because those are the people who bought vacation packages, they had the free time, they had the discretionary income. And so they would get a postcard in the mail that says, congratulations, you've been selected. You can choose between either a free 7-day cruise, airfare for 2 to Vegas, or some other little junk vacation. And these people would come in 20, 30 couples at a time, 35 couples at a time. They would go to this front little lobby and we would take over whole hotels. I mean, completely take over the front end of the entire thing. And then we would assign them to individual agents. So John would have been one of those agents where we would have checked them in. We made sure that they had a driver's license and a credit card or a checkbook so they could buy whatever John was selling. And then they would go meet with John. And then you would do, what was the first steps that you would do once you actually talked to that client?
Sure. So again, it's that Jordan Belfort approach, whether I knew it or not. And that's exactly what we do now at Capsource with our sales approach. But it was establish rapport, right? Mm-hmm. Just know them. Hey, what are you looking to do? Why? What got you down here? Was it the cruise? Was it the airfare? Do you just like free stuff? People like free stuff. Mm-hmm. And I would gather intel. Okay, this is what you like to do when you travel. These are the places you like to visit. You like these types of accommodations. Do you have kids? No kids? And then they would go into the presentation where you guys would present the product.
Yep.
Right? And then when they came out of that presentation, I needed to handle the objections. And if I couldn't close the deal, you had this saying, or Stanley had this saying of getting all of your no's and correct me if I'm wrong here, or take the 7 pennies from one pocket of rocks. Yes. And you have to move them over to the other. I vaguely remember that. So I would get all of my no's, and if I couldn't close the deal, I'd bring in a TO to take over and get it closed. But it was following that progression of establishing rapport, gathering the intel, presenting the product, overcoming the objections, and trying to close the deal. So I didn't know that I was using his approach, but that's essentially what I was doing.
And it's so fun too. And it's so crazy because it's like, right before you meet the clients, you got 10, 15 sales guys just being as raunchy and rough around the corners as possible. They just partied the whole night before. All of a sudden the clients come in and it's everybody's like nice and sweet and buttoned up, and then all of a sudden if you can't close the table, I'm coming over there. Hey John, how's it going? Let me see if, oh my goodness, how can I? And then as soon as they sign, we're all behind the scenes high-fiving, screaming, air humping. Like, it's such a good vibe. It's such a good feeling. The high, it's a drug.
Yeah, well, it is. And man, there was a lot of characters, and those characters are the perfect example of why having good sales skills are so important. Because, like, I'll give you an example, and I don't know if you remember this. We had this guy, I can't remember his name, like Tom, tall, bald guy.
I do remember Tom.
Yeah, he had this saying that was killer, and I still use this today, even in our sales training. It's not a lot of money. It's not a big deal.
Exactly.
He would say that 7-8 times throughout a pitch, and I'd hear it. And this guy was signing people up left and right, but like his belt buckle was sideways. Like, I remember a couple times he had big chunks of like shaving cream still on his head from that morning when he's shaving his head, looked disheveled, right?
Yes.
And guys closing people left and right. I'm buttoned up. I got my suit jacket on. I got my tie, thinking I'm Rico Suave, but this guy's out closing me with shaving cream on his head. There was another guy, Barrett. He was a character, had a cane, and always had his arm in a sling. And it was a great way to build rapport with people from the very beginning. But he would forget, and 40 minutes into the presentation, his arm that's in a sling, he's talking to people and doing this and still closing deals. So, yeah, it was crazy. It was fun. There was a lot of characters, but if you had the skills, you'd get the.
It taught us a lot. Speaking of Barrett, again, rest his soul. He was a guy that I actually worked with when I first started at 20 years old in high ticket sales. And he had that cane back then too. And it was just a prop for him because he understood that sales is, like you said, when you mentioned Jordan Belfort, it is a script. So if it's a script, it's a Hollywood production. And if you're going to have a Hollywood production, you might as well have some of that set that you design and bring yourself in. He was such a great, funny, lighthearted character, always coming to the table. And these businesses that we're talking about now help me really appreciate the power of a second face. And that's where a lot of people, even in the REI space, they fail to have that strategy. And it's such a powerful strategy. I think guys like me and you, if we have a fronter and a closer model, that we kind of have that second face. But even in there, there still is a fronter, a closer, and a TO. And a TO, for everybody listening, is a turnover. And so how did that concept resonate with you? Have you been able to apply that? And what do you think about that whole TO sales model?
Sure. So if you're asking if we've been able to apply it to what we do in the mortgage space, absolutely, right? It's just providing additional credibility, or maybe there's one or two pieces of information that the sales rep maybe missed on that call, where I can kind of backtrack, find out what that pain point is, and resolve that problem. Sometimes you have people that just want to hear something from an authority figure, right? It's somebody that's higher up than you, right? Oh, if there's a good deal, I know that the guy over there standing behind you, Scott, is able to give it to me. Yeah. So one, there is power in a second voice, right? Sometimes you get them to the edge and they just need somebody to come and push them over. And other times it's just kind of filling in the gaps where maybe that newer sales rep skimmed over, didn't dive deep enough into, or maybe missed completely, where I can come in, hit those points, and try and lock up the deal.
Yeah. Also, in conjunction, I think it's also the presentation of value. If I just give you something that's in my pocket, it's valuable, but it's not as valuable as, hey, dude, let me go ask this guy over there, see if he possibly couldn't give you that exact same thing that I have in my pocket, but see if I can't get him to give it out of his pocket to you versus anybody else that's here. And so it was a really great scarcity model sales ploy where we're able to say, hey, listen, today and today only, and here's the reason why today, and here's all these incentives that I can do, but I can't do anything else, and maybe this other guy can help. And it really matters a lot. And that's the reason why I found our now common interest of the real estate industry so disruptible to me, is because as soon as I started analyzing everybody in this space, I said, 95% of the people in the REI world, my opinion only, but don't have real sales skills. These guys have purchasing power, sure. They know how to buy on market. They know how to buy from wholesalers, but direct to seller, it doesn't that's a different breed than it is buying off of the MLS. And so I assume for you too, you recognize that there's probably a lot of wholesalers or investors out there that could use a year running around the streets with us at a travel club to really up their sales game.
Sure. Well, one thing, going back to the TO, it was an opportunity. As I loved using TOs because it was an opportunity for me to then join my client, right? It's not you versus me, right? And that was an valuable lesson that you taught me, is when you bring that TO in, like, move over to their side, right? Now it's us three versus the guy who's able to drop the price or give us that good deal. Like, I'm fighting with you or for you. And yeah, you're right. You know, if a lot of people in our space lack those skills, especially if you got into the business within the last couple of years when everything was so easy. Yeah. If you're an agent, you didn't need to have any sales skills. You just throw a sign in the front yard and that thing was going 50K over asking. Yes. The money was so cheap for an LO. It's like, I don't need to, typically sell people on money, right? That's a pretty easy sale. But when the interest rates are 3, 4, 5 times what they were, okay, well, now what do? You need to have some type of a skill set. And if it's not the product, it's you're selling your ability to get the deal to the finish line, or give the consumer what it is that they're looking for, or scratch that itch, for lack of a better term. So when you have the background that we have, really, you can take it to any industry, pick what you want to plug it into. But 1,000%, it really helps having that background.
Yeah, I just, for the people that are listening who maybe are doing sales, but they don't really understand what we're talking about on the TO model, you just articulated it well, but I'm going to kind of describe it visually. It's like being at a table of one person on one side, you the sales agent, and a husband and wife on the other side. When that second voice comes in, you move your seat. So now it's you, husband, wife, versus the new person who's turned over. In the REI world, what I couldn't figure out was like, hey, I'm buying homes virtually from a different continent now, or I'm buying homes from sitting in Orlando talking to somebody out in Kansas. So how do I do a TO model over the phone when it's only me? And so for those guys and gals in the REI space who understand, okay, yes, it would be great to have a second voice. Okay, it would be great to bring some value in. That's why we came up with the back office pitch, where we're letting them know, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, unfortunately, you know, wherever we get to our stopping point, you know what, let me go check with my back office team, or introduce that back office person or that person behind the corner. And we're able to create that TO experience by putting the customer on hold, quote unquote, going and talking to that person and bringing back their communication, or saying, you know what, I'm going to go fight for you. I'm going to go step up to the plate. So even if you're not face to face, and even if it's only you, with a little bit of creativity, you can unlock the power of a second voice on your sales pitch.
I love it. And let me ask you a question. So when you're doing that, are they applying different tactics? Like when you have not the takeover, but your sales rep, are they applying that tactical empathy, or is that something that you're saving for the back office or the takeover to come in, at least with your operation?
You know, I think that first is you should always go for the gusto. And so I expect my closers to employ that tactical empathy to go all the way to as far as they can before they unroll and bring in the TO. If you can go through your whole sales cycle without needing a TO, even better, because what that should represent is not having to give a discount. But I would expect them to do it all. And then what a lot of people don't understand is the TO doesn't have to be a better salesperson. Many, many, many times, I would bring in a junior associate. Hey, dude, can you come over here? I need you to help me drop this price. Here, come TO this table and drop the price. Because it's just that second voice. What a lot of people don't realize, my opinion, in sales, is that the customer is boxed into a lie to you. When they tell you in the beginning, hey, I'm not going to buy today. Hey, I can't afford it. They tell you that at the end. If they tell you now all of a sudden I want to buy it, there's neurologically something they're like, oh my God, he's going to know I'm a liar. Now, when the new person comes to the table, they're not locked into that lie anymore. So now they can be honest and be like, hey, you know, I really can. And yes, I will buy today. But sometimes you just need that voice, because that person is such a honest person. Your customer is so honest that they unfortunately box themselves into a lie that they need a new face, a new person. It doesn't have to be more skilled. It just needs to unlock their ability to move forward without actually being a liar.
Sure. That person's not, it's like the Chris Voss tactic. They're not taking no as an objection. It's a starting point, right?
Yes.
No, I'm not going to do this. Okay, perfect. Now we have a starting point. Let's see where we can take it from here. I like that.
So you mentioned the quarters in the pocket thing, and that was for me because I got it from a guy called Ray Rickard in like 2000, 1999, 2000 is when I got that. But my manager would say, hey, listen, I'm going to give you 5 quarters. Here, put these 5 quarters in your left pocket. While you're sitting there pitching these people, once you go for asking for the money, you're going to have to get at least 5 no's before you can get over there. And so every no you get under the table, move 1 quarter from your left pocket to your right. Then you talk a couple more minutes and you move them over. But that 5 no's to that 1 yes was a very integral part. And it doesn't even make sense. But genuinely, it takes 5 no's to get to a yes. And then sometimes your TO's got to come and get over. But no human who doesn't have sales skills would think, wait a minute. So you're telling me people actually buy what they want to buy, but they have to go through 5 no's to say yes to something they really want? It just doesn't make sense, but it's true.
Oh, especially from our line of business. I mean, they made a blood pact before they came in there that they weren't going to buy anything, right? We all know that. They come in there and they'll tell you before you even sit down, hey, I'm just here for the gift. Don't waste your time, blah, blah, blah. So, and that's, again, where building rapport in that first 5-10 minutes is so important, because I think if you build good enough rapport, then handling those 4, 5, or 6 objections is so much easier on the back end. It's very difficult to take those objections and bring in a TO if the rep hasn't built strong enough rapport up front, because you have nothing to stand on, right? So for me, it was always in that first 5 minutes of sitting down, can I make a friend? And maybe it was just talking about anything that has nothing to do with vacationing. It could have been sports. It could have been food. It could have been the weather, whatever. I wanted to make a friend so that when I got those no's and I brought in the TO, that we've established some rapport, and there was something, a baseline for the TO to work off of.
When I first got into your REI industry, and we'll go forward here in a second, but you were in REI space before I was. But I realized how many people there was a quote unquote mentor out there that was pitching 7 minutes or less pitches. He was like, hey, I'm going to teach you how to do wholesale transactions with your customers in 7 minutes or less. And immediately I was like, oh, this guy will be out of business so quick. And he's also feeding people poison pills because there was no rapport. There was no value in the commonality and loading your gun with bullets so that way you could use them later and then execute it on a real pitch, et cetera, et cetera. That's why I love what you just said there. It's because ours forced the sales process. There had to be a warm up because you had to spend 10 to 15 minutes with these people before you could even send them to go be closed, or not even closed, to go through the sales pitch. Then they would spend 40 minutes in this other room with somebody putting on a razzle dazzle presentation. Then they would come out and then you would present the offer. And then if they didn't sign up immediately, then there was the TO. But that sales cycle was so beautiful and so perfect, but that didn't exist in the REI space.
Well, it's super important for what we do because it's different. That business that we were in was more transactional. You might deal with that person one time and that's it. But with what we do on the finance side is a lot of our business is repeat business. So I understand the lifetime value of a client. So if I can't build rapport out of the gates, even if I got them to the finish line, closed that loan, got them an excellent program, they may not come back. Rapport is everything, especially in what we do in the real estate space, especially on the financing side where your clients continuously come back.
How long were you doing Travel Club with us? And did you you left before I left, right?
Yes. It was not long after. I mean, it's been so long now. And I was there for a few years. And when I left, we have a good friend in common, Alex. And when we were doing the Travel Club, Alex was the guy that was like bringing all these books with him, right? And he's studying up, talking about
a lot of books with him, lots of books.
Yeah. So, he's talking about real estate, and I had family that was in the real estate business, right? Agents, grandmother, dad, aunt. So I was like, all right, this is a sales business that I can go home at night, put my head on the pillow and feel good about what I'm doing. So I wanted to be in real estate, but before I went and took the test on Indeed or, whatever, looking at open job positions, and there was a local private lender advertising a mortgage position, and they specifically wanted somebody with timeshare experience.
Great.
So it was salary and commission. So I said, you know what? All right, let me give this a shot. And I went in, hit it off with the owner who eventually became my mentor, and worked under him for a decade, really kind of sharpening my skills, learning the business. But that's kind of how I got into it. It was basically just because I had worked with you and had that timeshare experience. I saw the ad and said, hey, let me give it a shot. They're looking for somebody just like me. And if that doesn't work, then I can go out and try to become an agent.
Yeah, we're talking about our mutual friend. His name's Alex Cazada, and so I remember him. I was pretty heavy in the travel club space and had no real at that moment intentions on leaving the space, and ultimately stayed in an adjacent industry for a while and built a pretty sizable company there. But I remember him having these yard signs. And like he would come and dude, it didn't matter what he did the night before. He could have partied like a rock star. He could have stayed up late. Didn't matter. This man would have in the back of his Jeep, like hundreds of yard signs already filled out, like I buy houses for cash. And I was really inspired by that. But I watched him collectively, for the guys and gals out there who's like, hey, I don't have a lot of money. I don't know where to start. I've seen it firsthand up front. A gentleman go from literally putting his first yard sign on the side of the road to being able to build a large multi-million-dollar comprehensive real estate portfolio. And really was the reason why I decided to get into the REI space, was his encouragement. And so I don't know what impact that him going into the REI space, if that piqued your interest, but for sure, I wouldn't have gotten into it had I not, and I didn't get into it till it was already significantly more successful, because I didn't want to go around putting out yard signs. But it's because of him that I ultimately got into the REI space.
Yeah, I was thinking about the space, not specifically what I'm doing, but yeah, I mean, I learned a lot from Alex. One, there's a great sales book, Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino.
Yes.
And one of the things that he talks about is the power of persistence and resilience. And I saw that in Alex when he would wake up every morning going and dropping those signs. He was persistent, right? He stuck with it. He paid for education to condense time, skip the line, and then applied everything that he learned. So I took a lot away from that, as well as the affirmations. So what people don't know, and I don't know if you've explained this on the show, but when we were doing the travel club, it was like, like prison bunks. Like you had to like stay in a room with another sales rep. And Alex was somebody that I always bunked with. And towards the end, he was doing this thing in the morning where he'd wake up early and he'd like pour this oil in his hands and he'd, rub his hands together and, look in the mirror and say, today's going to be a great day. I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to go 3 for 3. I'm going to close all of my deals. And I'd be like, man, this guy's crazy. And he'd go out there with missing a front tooth and go 3 for 3 and close every person in front of him. And I've told this story and I never told it to him, but it was like a month after where I'd just wait for him to leave that room and I'd go over to that table and I'd grab that oil myself. And I started sitting in front of the mirror like, all right, I'm going to make a lot of money today. I'm going to go through close my deal. So, I love it. Affirmations is a real thing. I've got books on affirmations. I've got another tactic that I learned from you is just like writing shit down on my mirror in the morning, goals, things that I want to do and accomplish and sticking to it. So, persistence, positive mindset. And if anybody's never read that book, there's not a whole lot of tactics in there, but there's a lot of great principles that you can build on as a salesperson.
I just did a podcast with a young man literally before this one started. And, he's just got done spending 3 years in parking lots at like 26, 27 years old, selling Amway in Walmart parking lots and just every mall that he could go into. And I'm like, he's like, dude, I didn't make any money. He's like, and not money that mattered. But for 3 years, he was in there building that persistency, building that resistance. And it's just like, I happen to interview him because I can see him as a rising star. Like instantly, I know that this kid's going to be one of the great ones in the industry over the next 5 to 10 years. And I wanted to kind of like time capsule where he's at in his life this was his first podcast. But what you're talking about there is exactly it. It's like that resistance that you need in sales, that defeat, because even you and Alex and me, none of us have ever had a winning track record in sales. We've always been told no more than we've told yes and have still made millions. And so it's like That's what's so crazy about sales, and that's also the reason why it's a high barrier to entry emotionally, but not, you don't have to be intellectual, you don't have to be educated, you just got to be able to have the fortitude to be told no so many damn times.
Yeah, you just got to keep going. And if you do that, it's like if I told somebody who's never lifted weights in their life, and they're standing in front of me, and I give them a dumbbell, and I said, just pick that up and lift it every single day, right? If you do it every single day, you're undoubtedly going to get stronger,
Yes.
right? So you're just building that muscle. And if you're somebody who can't take the no's, or you get into sales and you go 4 months and you don't make money and you give up, that's on you. But the ones that stick to it, they plug away, they're persistent, resilient, give back. Giving value is a big one. It's all going to pay off in the end. And that was something that, early on in my LO career, my mortgage career, I had to kind of figure that out the hard way. In the very beginning, it was very difficult. So many people reach out to me, and I can go through, my sales progression, my pitch, and they love it and they want to do business with me, but they don't have a deal. So rather than just sit there for 6 months and wait for them to come back and say, all right, John, I finally got a deal, I'm ready to go, I wanted to be proactive. So I would go out to the Alexes of the world in my local market, the wholesalers, and figure out, okay, here, this guy's got 5 deals right now that I could lend on. And I would take those 5 deals and then bring it back to the client that I just talked about, that I know is going to take 6 months to go and find the right property, or get stuck by analysis, by paralysis, and just not pull the trigger, where I could say, hey, you have the backing of your lender. I've ran the numbers. I've done the comps. Let's go. Let's rock and roll. So it was just staying persistent, if not with my approach in sales, just, the work ethic, going out and then bringing the deal, or marrying the two.
Yeah, and one thing I can applaud you on is that with your sales skills and your background to some of the call centers, particularly in Central Florida, you would have been faced time and time and time and time again for years, where you could make more money doing something gray than what you were making at that current venture, but you consistently chose to go find these other paths where you weren't, because there was a lot of real bad boiler room scam rooms, and you had the sales skills and you had that. And so sometimes you get into them and then you realize how wonky it is, and then you get out and say, okay, that's actually a bad campaign. But ultimately, the reason why you have such a powerful, impactful company is because you continue to put those sales skills behind a good product and kind of trudged it out for the long haul. Because we both know guys who either got in trouble and or just never escaped that boiler room mentality.
No, I knew, later on in my career, I was able to identify those situations pretty quickly, if not during an interview. And I was lucky when I found my previous employer. Like I said, he became my mentor and was such a good guy, and I owe so much to him that I probably stayed there too long, to a fault. I was too loyal. Because my biggest regret is not, when I had really kind of honed my skills and figured out the business, not moving out on my own. I had also had a really good income. It was on autopilot, and I had worked my way up from sales rep to director of sales, and responsible for hiring and training everybody, and had an override. But, looking back, it's like, I wish I would have made the move that I made a few years ago a lot earlier. But I was able to identify those rooms that you don't want to be in. And quickly in that first interview, I knew this is a place that I wanted to be. I had to go through 3 more other interviews to finally get my foot in the door. But once I did, I probably for the first time in my life said, I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to put 110% effort, rather than just coasting through and relying on talent. Those skills that I learned from Scott and Alex and Stan and John Britt in the timeshare days, I'm now going to apply. And then I had the hustler mentality on top of it. So, I talk to these prospects every day, but now the hustler in me is like, I'm going to go and find the deal for you before you find the deal.
I was going to ask you this question later about where your current business is, but I'm curious, when you do a transaction now, helping somebody secure funding for their project, is it any different than the avatar or client or role that you were doing for Bridgewell back in the day? Is it effectively the same sales cycle? It's just a different, better, et cetera product?
Yes, same cycle, different type of a product. We were more privately based, private funding at Bridgewell. But yeah, I mean, everything's like, it's probably 90% of the same product or approach that I would take.
The reason why I ask is sometimes I feel like I have to work on both sides. I work direct to seller, and then I work direct to the REI people. So my lead gen company that we have here at the office, obviously we're direct to seller, but also I have clientele. So I'm dealing direct to wholesalers or REI guys who have their own fix and flip businesses. And I'm curious if you ever feel a little like, I'm gonna say neutered because I don't know a better word for it, but it's like you got all these raw dog sales skills. Like you can really sell, water to a whale, right? Like you're one of the elite sales guys out there. Do you ever feel like, damn, I don't even get to use any of these overarching crazy tactics anymore because your client avatar it's different?
Well, yes and no. I mean, the principles still apply. It might be less about the product and more about the person, right? There's a lack of talent in our space. There's too many fishermen where their only job is to get the fish in the boat. The loan officers in our space, because of, I don't know if it's lack of time, lack of training, whatever it may be, they're not educated on real estate 101. They're not underwriters before they're mortgage brokers. So if it's not the product, because the reality is, I mean, each lender is a little different. There's small variances in the product that they offer. Maybe they're, a 0.5% cheaper on a bridge loan or 1% cheaper on a DSCR loan, or they like to specialize in short-term rental financing, whatever it may be. But what I sell is my ability to get them to the finish line. There's a saying in real estate investing that you don't make money when you sell the property, you make money when you buy it. Amen. So if you can't get it to the finish line, because the individual that you're working with doesn't have the skill set to do that, right? They don't know how to look at the pitfalls up front and say, hey, here's where you're going to get stuck. For example, our business and your business, it's a wholesale deal. The lender that you're working with, you may be unaware of the fact that they don't finance assignment fees because the loan officer didn't know. They didn't look at the contract and see the word assignment at the top. They just got a piece of paper and saw that there was some signatures on it. Where I will explain that to them up front and say, hey, if you're doing this type of a transaction, this is the type of product that you need to go with it. So it's not so much the rate, it's not so much the points, it's not so much the down payment. I'm selling myself and my ability to get them to the finish line. And what we do at Capsource to kind of separate ourselves is offer more of a coaching and consultative approach. Right. So it's not just fishermen getting people in the boat. It's, okay, what are your goals? Like, where do you want to go in your business? Let's start, as Kent Clothier would say, with the end in mind, and then reverse engineer a process for you to get there. And so, again, 10 out of 10 people that I talk to and I'm able to get through that whole pitch, they want to work with me. It's just a matter of now I need to rely on them to go and get the deal, or you need to rely on the closer, the wholesaler that you're passing that lead off to actually get it closed. So there's some parts of the business that are out of my control, no matter how good of a salesman you are. Yeah. But again, that goes back to my approach that I found out early in my career, and what catapulted me to the top is that I'm not going to rely on you, the consumer. Everything that you're telling me is great and you're telling me I'm awesome. You just need to get a deal. I'm going to go and find it for you. And now we have no excuses. We're either doing business or you're not serious.
Well, I can at least speak firsthand because me and Alex are business partners in a number of properties and transactions out of the Central Florida office, and you've bailed us out. Capsource has bailed us out many, many, many times, and just quick funding that we needed on a deal where all of a sudden we had to assign to somebody else. The buyer fell out. We know it's too good of a deal. The liquidity, we just needed to be able to get some type of bridge help, and you're literally there. We've done, I don't know how many you've done for us. Maybe you have an idea in totality between me and Alex and with Alex, but talk about a strategic partner and building that relationship. You've been there for us more often than not, man. And so just business to business. Thank you, because you've helped grow our portfolio.
No, and it's reciprocated. I appreciate you guys trusting us. I remember it wasn't too long ago, you were in Orlando and they were running a seminar out of their office that you were speaking at. And like literally you and I are talking in the back, and their TC came up and said, hey, we have this deal under contract. Our borrower can't get a hold of their lender. And it took me 2 seconds. I went to the TC and said, okay, do you know if they paid the lender money up front? right? And she gets the borrower on the phone, and first question I asked him is, how much did you pay the lender up front? And he's like, $3,500. I was like, boom, mistake number one. The first thing I tell everybody is you don't pay anybody anything up front. In fact, I have money. I don't need to sell money, and I'm not asking for anything from you up front. If I get the job done and we close, I get paid. So it's just a matter of educating people. So that's why in that instance, the product didn't matter.
Yes.
He might have had a 7% rate with his previous lender. I could have told him it's 20, but you're not going to lose your EMD, that $5,000 that you put down, and you're not going to lose the $60K in potential profit because I can look at the deal and identify, again, where the pitfalls are and understand how to overcome those objections. And that's what we're really good at. So if it's not selling the product, sell your ability to get the job done.
One of the things I also appreciate from your relationship side is how you'll match your investors and their capacity to obtain or having funds to deals. Like always, like you're hitting us up. Hey man, do you know anybody who's got deals in Maryland? Do you know anybody that's got deals in Ohio? Hey, what do you guys have here in this market? Because you're doing that relationship so well, you're helping them find their next deals. And this is the greatest part about sales for those that are out there is if you can actually get, Zig Ziglar said it best, if you help enough people get what they want out of life, you can have everything that you want out of life. So now you've found that thing where you can help people get what they want out of life. I want to build my own portfolio. I want to take down this first property. I want to leave a legacy for my kids. And you get paid to help people. It literally doesn't get any better than that.
And that's echoed with Og in his book, The Greatest Salesman in the World is the Value of Giving. I have countless people that have come to me that have never done a real estate transaction. And I tell them, and this is why I like new investors, is because they're coachable, right? I promise if you listen to everything that I'm telling you, you're going to be able to turn this into a business. And that's something I ask everybody. Is this a passion project or are you trying to make a business out of it? 9 times out of 10, it's a business. So I will dive deep into their business, their strategy, figure out where they need help, coach them along the way. And I've had countless people say, John, what are you getting out of this? Right.
Yeah.
And that goes back to what I said earlier, the value of giving. When I spend that time, one, you're going to be successful. You're going to make money and come back. And I have a great example of this, a client in North Carolina. He came to me a year and a half ago, had never done this before, had a background in construction. We're now 8 deals in. He's got a small portfolio he's growing. He's quit his W-2. But because of that, the tree of referrals is like, it's crazy. I think I've done maybe 4 or 5 deals from referrals from that one client. Nice. All because I took an extra 2 hours up front, or I took that extra call at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday and answered those issues, or I went and found a deal. Alex and Anthony have funded a couple, or excuse me, given them projects, a couple of their deals. So when I spend that time giving, then I know that they're going to appreciate that and they're going to tell somebody else. And I still think that word of mouth marketing is one of the best forms of marketing out there.
Yeah, I see a guy like you, and you have your business partner as well. What's his name?
Mark Munson.
Mark. You know, I think about it in two bifurcating roles. I was having flashbacks while you were talking. You remember that time I gave you money in a McDonald's bag in a McDonald's parking lot?
I do.
So when I started my last company, which ultimately grew to this big monster company, but in the beginning, I feel blessed to be good at sales, but a savant on the marketing side, like really, really good on the marketing side. So I was generating leads, but I needed a raw dog closer. And I just remember reaching out to you. You talk about relationships and going the extra mile. And I was like, bro, I need somebody to help close these leads. I'm generating too many leads and I need to focus on marketing. I need somebody. I just remember having you help me with those deals. And then ultimately what that meant as a butterfly effect, because I was able to add me some capital and just meeting you in a McDonald's parking lot with a brown bag full of cash and being like, man, here's the rip on that deal.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing is that you owe me some commission. There's some back pay somewhere.
There might be a couple of back dollars out there. Dude, one other thing, I want to talk about your business and how people can find you and exactly what you're doing. I remember a quote you said, though, the other day. We were talking about our old, and you were saying something that I had said. You said something about, I gave a meeting once where I gave everybody a pay decrease. And and I was I don't remember it. Can you share what it is?
Sure. So this was maybe like a year into the travel club. And we had it was a day. I don't even think we had tours scheduled. It was like an off day where everybody came into the office. And this is one of the greatest displays of salesmanship I've ever seen, where you started to politely give us all a pay cut. Now, there was an incentive. There was a goal that it was like a touch the moon goal. If you hit this, you'll make X amount of dollars to offset it. But I remember looking to the person to the right, and maybe it was Alex or somebody else, and I said, we're getting demotions right now. We're being demoted. But by the end of that speech, you had literally every person in there. It was a standing ovation. I've never seen a group of people get up and clap and cheer for making less money. So that was one of the greatest. I've told that story a few times, I think maybe on Strat's podcast and at AREA, that the power of sales is so strong that you could literally go to your staff and say, I'm going to pay you less money. And they cheer you for it. That was an amazing display of sales.
I wish I could remember it, and maybe I was sold on it so well that I also thought it was somehow a promotion too. You know what I mean? Maybe I was just conveying the message.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's great, man. And so again, for our business, we have a wholesaling office and investment office in Orlando, Florida. You've helped us a lot. Who is your ideal avatar? Where are you helping them? Here's what I find, honestly, and maybe you can piggyback that off of this. I have a lot of customers who don't even know businesses like you really exist. And so what they are is they're wholesalers that can't make that jump from wholesaling to investing, to starting their own portfolio. So how do they change that mindset? What do they got to do when they see a deal and they're like, man, I hate giving this one away for, a $30K fee? Where do they start? Like,
where do we go? So the first thing I tell them is, honestly, I shouldn't be your first option. As bad of a plug for my business as that is, it's the reality. So it's what Alex and Anthony do in their office. I would tell them as a starting point. You got to understand creative finance, right? So if you're a wholesaler and you're looking at an opportunity and there's a massive spread on it, you need to know sub-2, you need to know seller finance, you need to know novations. And what I tell people is that hard money, it's like, we're like Starbucks. I'm on every corner. There's a million of me, right? It's finding the one that fits what you're trying to do the best. And we provide a ton of value for wholesalers. If it's not taking down their own deal, it's acting as great dispo agents. It's making sure that more of their deals get closed because we understand wholesale transactions. I understand how to finance assignment fees. It's keeping your hand in the cookie jar a little more. Too many wholesalers are left on the outside looking in on a transaction and following up with their borrower who said that they were probably paying cash, who now says that they're using financing. They don't know who the lender is. They've got earnest money on the line. They've got a 40K spread. They don't know what to do. There's so much fallout on these wholesale deals. And you might have better numbers in terms of conversion ratios once you get a contract, but we provide a ton of value to their business. I tell every wholesaler, you need to be partnered with a lender and understand what they can and can't do like the back of your hand, and it will absolutely increase your sales. Which is why we work with, Alex's and a lot of, other big players from the boardroom or local wholesalers in our core markets, because one, it's giving my clients inventory. It's moving deals where I don't have to take any of your commission or charge a dispo fee. Yep. And you have a little bit more control over the process. But to answer your question, minus the wholesalers, our avatar is what we call a Henry. It's a high earner, not rich yet. Somebody that's got a good income that either wants to build generational wealth or escape the 9-to-5 and, make a business for themselves.
So, I think you just helped open my mind up a little bit there too. So it's not necessarily about the wholesaler who's maybe trying to cherry pick his 1 or 2 deals. How they can really leverage you in their business is to make sure that you're the resource for their cash buyers, for their guys or gals who are like, dude, I'd love to take on a third property. I just don't have the capital right now to do number 4. Oh man, I wish you would have called me with that one 6 months ago. I just picked up this other property. By forming this relationship with you, then they can plug you into all their cash buyers who are out there who are running multiple projects who just may be a little bit strapped at the moment.
Right. And even those guys, like, they should be coaching them. Like, everybody loves cash. It's king. It's quick. But again, I want my cash investor to come back and buy 10 houses a month if they can. The power of leverage is a real thing. Using OPM or other people's money, you could have 100 grand to your name right now, Scott, and you could go and buy an $80,000 house and put 20K into it and keep 100% of the profit. I like that. That's a good day's work. But if I could take that 100K and split it up amongst 4 deals, maybe I make a 320% return because of the cost of the financing, the holding cost. I'm either still doing more deals, making more money on the same amount of working capital, or I'm able to go and operate in a different price range, right? Like our data shows that until you start to get to like those 600K houses and above, profit margins are the same at 150 as they are at 250. So if I'm going to go and do the same amount of work, it costs the same amount of money, it takes the same amount of time. Do you want to make 20% on 350K, or do you want to make 20% on 100K?
Nice.
So it's just allowing you to do more, and you don't want to have all of your eggs in one basket. If that deal bellies up or you can't move it or there's something wrong, all of your cash is in there. Or, you know, Lamasu calls you up with a great deal. Hey, I've got a owner who's agreed to 60% of the Zestimate, but you have to pass on it because all of your money's tied up in that previous project. So there's multiple benefits to both investors and wholesalers alike, whether it's dispoing deals, taking down their own deals, just increasing sales within their business. You need to be partnered with somebody to help you do that. And if it's not myself, then you need to have a lot of capital partners, and you need to understand creative finance as well.
Yeah. So when people reach out, do they have the opportunity to speak with you? Like, because obviously you're wildly knowledgeable about the space and how to best maximize and leverage the deals. Are you the guy that they get to speak to, or do they have to go through the ringers to get to you? How does it work in your business right now?
I mean, I'm always available. Obviously, I have a sales staff, but if there's somebody who needs help, I mean, I constantly hold one-on-one consultations in my office on weekends, right? So if there's a group of people where I can get 30 or 40 of you together and don't have the distractions of everything else going on in the office, and we can sit down and talk X's and O's, I'm happy to do that. I think going into 2024, my business partner, Mark, will take more control over the sales operation, and I can focus a little bit more on growth. That's our plan: bigger office, more people, more manpower. And really try and take it to the next level. I'm extremely proud of what we did this year, considering the economy, the market, the interest rates. I think we ended really strong and weathered the storm well. I always say, smooth waters don't make for skilled sailors, right?
Yeah.
And that goes true in any business. If you can deal with the ups and downs, like if you were an investor in 2008, you know exactly what to do right now. And that's true with running any business. So I tell our staff, even myself, is if we can get through a year like this year and not take any steps backwards, we're doing something right. So we're extremely excited about what the future holds.
Yeah. And so what do you think the future holds with rates? Like, where are you guys forecasting? Obviously, you built your business or accelerated your business, kept it in one of the toughest times it's been probably since you've gotten into this space. So where do you see it in 24?
So, all depends on who you listen to. There's the magic guy behind the curtain. But we've already started to see it. Rates are starting to come down, anywhere between maybe 3 to as high as 6 drops going into next year. But when rates drop, prices go up, right?
Yeah.
So people that are sitting on the sidelines waiting for the rates to go down might be doing themselves a disservice, because, the saying goes, date the rate, marry the property. If you have the right opportunity in front of you right now, wholesaler, investor, rookie, experienced, pro, take action, because there is going to be a point where those rates come down, it boosts those values up, and you're going to make a lot of money overnight via your equity. Everybody that I talked to coming out of 2008, when I first got in the business, everybody had echoed the same point: I wish I bought more. So if you're on the sidelines, you need to get in now, because rates are going to come down this coming year. And I think it's going to push values back up.
Yeah, and I think to anybody out there who's got any type of REI company out there, if you don't have a guy like O'Leary in your Rolodex, somebody that's saved as a favorite in your phone, make it O'Leary, make it John O'Leary, thecapsource.com, because you're obviously wildly knowledgeable about this space. And I know that you've helped us get deals across the finish line that nobody else could, or we had somebody else and they couldn't get it, and then obviously you were there to bail us out. And it only takes a couple of times for that to happen before you don't even try anything else. And so, dude, I'm super proud. As a buddy, as a friend, it's great to have you in my life. I'm very thankful for what you've done for our business, and I'm excited to to have this podcast and also to come back and do it again in maybe like a year, man. And let's see exactly where our businesses are setting, how many more people you're able to help, and whatever else you got going on, man. I'm a big champion and a fan of everything you're doing.
Likewise. No, I really appreciate that. And honestly, I look up to guys like you and Alex a lot. You guys have kind of helped carve the path that I've taken. So I owe a lot to you guys. And trust me, I'm working on my passport. I want to come down and see that operation myself. I've seen what you've posted online via Instagram, Facebook, and I know plenty of people that have gone down there and seen it in person. And I know it's extremely impressive. So I'm also super proud of you and everything that you have accomplished and built down there. And I appreciate the opportunity and the platform to get on here and talk and chop it up.
Yeah, man, I'll make sure I push this out to all of my affiliates, man. I want them to know more about it. Guys, if you're in the REI space, if you need funding, if your clients need funding, if you're anywhere in looking to build your portfolio, grow a colleague, family members, whoever's portfolio, thecapsource.com. John O'Leary, he is the CEO and co-founder of the company. He will take care of you. He will make sure that you continue your journey. I love that phrase, the Henrys, let's get them to rich. And I don't know if you got an analogy for once they turn to rich, but anyways, let's turn those Henrys into really wealthy guys.
I look forward to it. I appreciate it.
All right, talk to you, brother.
All right, buddy.
All right, have a good one.